We're going to dive right in. Another headline involving an airline, Delta this time. And we know that last time Rob got very passionate about the airline story. So we thought, you know what, no one better to bring into this combo. So stand by with your comments. Dina, go ahead and spill the tea.
Okay, so essentially what happened is a California family coming back from Hawaii to Los Angeles was on a Delta flight. It's a family of 5, okay? There's the mom, the dad, they had an 18-year-old, and then 2 very small kids, a 2 and a 1-year-old, I believe. So all 5 of these family members were planning on coming back to LA, and then the family decided, you know what, why don't we book that 18-year-old another flight, and let's use that seat that he would have been in for the 2-year-old, because initially they were going to have the 2-year-old and the 1-year-old sit on parents' laps. Did they tell the airline this change was happening? Unclear, but here's what did happen. You are looking at the father in the confrontation with the Delta Airlines flight attendant and another security member, and they're essentially saying you cannot have your 2-year-old sit in the seat of this 18-year-old, claiming the 18-year-old didn't show up for the flight, therefore we now have an open seat, we did overbook, we now have someone else who wants to sit in that seat. Your 2-year-old, the whole plan the whole time was to sit on your lap. So you don't get to just bump the 2-year-old to the 18-year-old seat. So now the conversation has moved to this family eventually got off the plane. They had to pay $2,000 for flights on another airline. They're upset, and the whole story has gone viral.
Yes, absolutely viral this morning. We have different opinions. I'm going to go ahead and let Rod chime in first on this. Not let, because we can all chime in if we want. but I want you to go in first because you have an interesting perspective. And you go ahead.
Well, this one seems a little bit different.
It does, right?
It just feels different. I feel when you watch the video and you hear the man and how passionate he is.
Yeah.
Okay, so remember, this is the situation. You're here and he's speaking on behalf of the family. They're just trying to get from A to B. They're already seated. You've got 2 kids. Remember, kids on an airplane, it's a ticking time bomb before they start to lose it, okay? Right. So they're just trying to, listen, can we just go? We worked this all out amongst ourselves. In their mind, they paid for the seat, right? So why can't they use it? But then you're going to get into a situation where I am almost positive that the way that the airline works, 18-year-old didn't show up for flight, for the flight, so that seat has now gone into the whatever, and then now they get to use it, and then it's internally among the family, when we bought the seat, we'll just put the kid over there, everything's fine. So there's probably a disconnect there. So in this one time, I'm really interested to hear what the airline has to say, because I'm sure that there's much more to the story. However, with that said, here's another situation where there are choices to be made amongst the staff, with the gate agent as well as the flight attendant, about, okay, now we see the situation here. There's kids here, whatever. Right. Is there something that we can work out? Because obviously you can hear him plead his case. He's making sense, okay?
Saying that they bought 3 tickets.
Yes.
The third person wasn't able to be there, or he was left early or is leaving later.
Right.
Therefore, they have 2 kids that can sit on the lap, right? But they decided since they bought that 3rd ticket, they're just going to place their kid there. They feel as though they have the right to do that. Exactly.
So this is what I'm passionate about. I know what your paper says. I know what the rules and regulations, all that sort of stuff. Can you start to work it out? And that's where I feel like we're losing something, because there's a moment where X, 1 + 1 = 2, but there's situations where you have to work it out. You're in customer service. By the way, these are all on video, just so you know. So whoever's right or wrong, I'm sure that this will be talked about endlessly. Right. And then we will decide whatever the paperwork says, if Delta was right or wrong. We will decide as the public how we decide if they're right or wrong. So in the moment before it escalates to that situation, can you work it out?
But here's the thing. Sorry.
I was going to say, I want to hear from Cornelia, too, because her opinion.
Well, okay, my thing is, at first, you sit back and you go, well, they purchased 3 tickets as a family, whether it's the 18-year-old or one of the toddlers that are sitting in it, who, it's not up to the airline to decide that for them. I get that side of it. But then you start to think from the business perspective, from the rules and regulations perspective, from the perspective of, if we let one person get away with this, we have to let everyone get away with this. We can't give special treatment to a family. Would it be the right thing to do? Would it make sense? Yes. But this flight was overbooked, and it was at a time where they needed that extra seat. Right. So even though they purchased it, they have to go back to the rules, which and this is an assumption, but if someone, being the 18-year-old in this case, did not show up for that flight, technically that was a no-show. It doesn't mean that that family has the right, because it's under the 18-year-old's name. Right. It doesn't mean that they can put anyone. If they brought a toddler or an animal or whatever it may be, doesn't mean they can just put anyone in that seat. The person who was assigned to that seat did not show up. Therefore, I would believe that Delta's saying, and we have someone that needs a seat, we're going to utilize that. Put your toddler on the lap.
Well,
And I agree with Megan. I want to hear Camelia.
Okay, so let's keep it all the way 100. Everybody that works for a particular airline is never on the same page. I can go to the ticket counter with a carry-on bag and they can say, you know what, that's too big, but you good. Just go through check-in and you'll be good. You can just, stow it at the top.
Humans being humans,
No,
right.
wait. When I get to the gate, Renee at the gate is like, that's too big. You're going to have to check that bag. But Aubrey at the ticket counter told me that I could do this. I don't care. You have to do this. So it's possible that everybody is not on the same page. It's very possible that the person at the ticket counter told them, you know what, you can swap seats, use your kids, you did pay for this seat. We don't know that. We're waiting to hear what Delta has to say. So that's one thing. But let's take it into account. Let's say you are an overweight passenger or someone who wants extra room, right? You buy two tickets for 2 seats.
Okay.
The flight is overbooked at the fault of Delta Airlines, not at the fault of the passenger. You overbooked the flight when you knew in the news right now we're having issues with overbooked, so you took it upon yourself to keep doing this. One. So someone wants the seat because the flight is overbooked, but I paid for 2 seats. So now, because you messed up and you overbooked, I have to give up the seat that I paid for.
That's not messing up. It's according to the rules and regulations.
But you
when we buy a
overbooked.
ticket, you
overbooked.
But they say that in the rules and regulations. So
But
if you
it
don't
gets-
like it, don't fly that
So
airline.
again, with all the drama and as customer service based companies,
Sure.
with all of the drama that we see in the news, with the backlash with Dr. Dow, with the backlash with the old boy who was a slam poet, who forget what
Right,
happened with
right.
him. You had somebody getting in a fight last week on an airline. With all of the drama and as customer service representatives, your number one job is to please the customer. What is this now the tone? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so if there was an overweight passenger who wasn't that overweight, but they made her buy 2 tickets, they saw an empty seat, were they going to give up her seat too?
But I think
because
that's
they were
a totally
overbooked.
different scenario. I don't
think
know
it's
that you
apples
can.
and
Yeah, I
oranges,
don't think
yeah.
you can pair it all the way. I do want to bring in some of your comments real quickly. Trisha Stainbrook says the solution is to make the tickets transferable. So here's where I stand on this. If that family knew in advance, we're going to have our 18-year-old get on another flight so our 2-year-old can sit there.
Yeah.
If that is what their plan was, which it sounds like it was, they needed to make sure that was okay with the airline. Because when they got to the front, the 2-year-old and the 1-year-old, I don't know how they flew on the way to Hawaii, but they needed to say, hey, the person whose name this ticket is under, you might call it when you see that they haven't checked in for their flight. When they've gone through everybody at the gate, it's all empty, and they're going, excuse me, is there a Mr. Nathan Smith, made up that name, available for his seat? Anyone. They call perhaps, and that person doesn't show up. Was the airline made to know that that person wasn't coming and that this family who bought that ticket was going to be using it for another passenger? Because if not, I don't think we can fault the airline. How did they know it was a family of 5 and this was a 3rd ticket the family purchased together?
They're
They
just
don't know
looking at
that.
the numbers.
So this is where I think this is going. I think there's a gray area with the 2-year-old because for some areas, if you're under 2, you can fly on a lap. If you're
Right.
over 2, you have to buy a ticket. So we will find out about that.
And Roberta says a child over 2 years old has to pay for a ticket anyway, at least with Southwest. So
Yeah,
again,
exactly.
go with different
Different
airlines.
So and let's just be honest here. Some parents are going to say, "Oh yeah, they're under 2," or "No, she needs a seat. She's over 2." So look, let's just be honest. Parents answer that question how they choose, regardless of the age of the child. Let's just be honest. That's a lot of money. Number 2, maybe there's a fee involved with transferring a name, and they're like, "What's the difference? Why do I need to pay this? It's my seat. I paid for it. Who cares who's in the seat?"
Right.
Which is a philosophical argument.
I get it.
Right, exactly. But Delta's going to come at the no, and trust me, they like rules and regulations. They talk
When
about rules
there's
and
when
regulations
there's
all day
someone
long.
else who needs to sit in that seat, I think if there was not an overbooking issue here and
Right.
the 2-year-old wanted to sit in that
Right.
seat and they had paid for it and the 18-year-old was a no-show, I think I can't quote Don't quote me on this, but I would think they would allow that. But the problem came when there was that person who needed the seat, whether it be a
Which
crew
was
member
the
or
fault of
another
the
person.
airline, as
Or-
Cornelia
but-
said.
and
But
Cornelia's saying that, but it's not really the fault if it's in the rules.
But
True,
again,
they can do
against
that.
every rule ain't a good rule. Let's be real. Just because something is on paper doesn't mean that it's a quality rule. So I get the concept
Of
of
course,
rules,
but-
and this is what it says. But let's call a spade a spade. If a rule is a bad rule, it's a bad rule. And let's give another scenario with the overbooked. Why is it that when it comes to situations with overbooking, we're willing to let the airlines be all willy-nilly, but we wouldn't stand for this in any other industry? Let's say I booked 2 hotel rooms, and you had somebody from corporate or somebody else who came into the hotel and said, I really need a room. But I know the room that you booked, the extra room, nobody's in it. Knock, 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 I need your room.
Yep.
Will we stand for that as well?
No.
I paid for 2 rooms.
Sure.
So
I know,
what?
but
I
the-
need the
let's
room.
go back to
So
why
again,
they
why why isn't the conversation again that they keep overbooking and this keeps happening?
right, the overbooking conversation, I think, is an issue. But did they know that this Nathan person was a member of this family of 5? Everyone's name was on a ticket. So when they all checked in, this random person didn't, which is why airlines say they overbook, because people don't show up for flights all the time. Once they were on the flight and they realized it was a family, they bought the ticket. Could the customer service conversation come in then? Yes, of course. But I'm just so curious to know how it started. If they were aware that this was a group together, or if it was just, hey, random guy didn't show up, now we have a seat.
And I guess this problem would have been solved if, and maybe I don't fly Delta often. Southwest, you can transfer your ticket, right? So you can't make it that day. I would imagine, why would this family go off and pay for an extra ticket if Delta was allowing them to transfer? So maybe that's more of the issue. If they know that they can't make the flight, they would have just made it a transferable ticket. Therefore, this problem wouldn't have existed, because Delta then could have filled that seat knowing ahead of time that the 18-year-old wouldn't be there. My other thing is, let's go back to the reason why airlines overbook. And this is just having done research for the past couple of weeks with this issue being in the headlines. From my understanding, and again, I don't know if this is for all airlines, but the reason why they don't just overbook for S&Gs, you know what I mean? They're overbooking because in the end, supposedly, of what I was reading, it saves us money in the long run, because for them to put an aircraft in the air with it not being full is going to cause us to pay more money for our tickets. They want full flights. They want full flights, and according to research,
I want you to see my eye roll.
according to,
I don't
come
care.
on.
But listen, according to research, if they can't fill a flight, they have seen that people, a majority,
you're right.
say on average 10 people, 5 people,
Right.
let's just say 5 people don't show up on average for a flight. If they know that that's a consistency, then they're going to overbook to get ahead of that issue.
But then when
right.
but in the event that everybody
Business-wise-
does show up, then as an airline, you have to take responsibility for what you did. As a passenger,
You're right.
I
I
don't
get it.
have to
Yeah.
I don't have to shoulder the fact that as a business you want to overbook because certain people don't show up. That's not my responsibility as a passenger and as someone who is wanting to benefit from your exceptional customer service.
Right.
That's just not my job.
I like all these comments. Toyo Ozzy says this falls on the responsibility of the family flying. If their agenda was to utilize the seat knowing the original owner was not present, then the family should have made it a point to validate that their child could sit there. Then Dave Rosenberg also says, fault on the family for not scanning the ticket. But we're also seeing
But do we know this?
Carlos.
Where's Delta? Have they said anything?
No, they haven't.
Delta says
They
they're going to
post-
try to make it right. They
Yeah.
talked to KCBS down in Los Angeles. This was a California flight, a California family. They did say that they're coming out and trying to make this okay.
Yes.
There is the stuff happening up at Congress. We know that CEO of United, Dr. Dow's situation, just testified in front of the committee, HTC committee, earlier this week and said, yes, we are not overbooking, and this is coming from
Right.
them.
Right.
American Airlines was there, Alaska Airlines, Southwest was there, Delta was not present. So we don't know where their stance is on overbooking. For them, it's policy.
And one final thought on this, because I know you have a couple other stories,
Yeah.
a special guest sitting right over
Yeah.
there. There's more to this story too, because some of the words exchanged went to a whole different level about someone maybe going to jail
Yes,
or not, and all that.
right.
We didn't even get into that. It's not extra shot. It's just extra shot. We don't even have enough time for that.
Extra
Just
tea.
one.
Yeah, I got to go do radio.
Okay.
Thank you guys for including me.
Thanks,
This is the
Rob.
best part, is that we can talk about it all day long, but since we're on Facebook Live, your comments are right down here.
Yeah.
So
Good
that's
job.
what we appreciate.
And where
Yes.
can people find you on the radio right now?
Cat Country.
Cat
Stockton,
Country.
Modesto, in that area, #1 country music station in that area. I'm going to go do radio for them right now.
And tell them that
Nice.
temps are up in the 80s.
Yes.
Oh.
You have been listening all
I
night
have
long.
been
That was a
listening.
little extra shot.
Yeah, extra shot.
Keep
Okay.
commenting. We're going to move on. Though.
Yes.